On tonight's Cover One Buffalo podcast, we are joined by Steve Palazzolo of Check the Mic podcast. But first, our guys, Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL. Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn, and our friend, Steve Palazzolo from Check the Mic podcast. Steve, how we doing?
Doing great. Figured I'd dress for the occasion with the Allen jersey. So, I know the audience. So here are. Enjoy. Having fun here.
We are not above pandering. Like we enjoy a thorough pandering, if we're being honest.
Absolutely. It's actually my favorite part of Hard Knocks is you get all these people have been complaining about how like boring it is. And to me, it's perfect. It's like Bill's propaganda.
Slow motion.
Yeah.
Josh Allen all day. I'll watch it for hours.
Yeah.
Love it.
So Steve, first, I think many folks like ourselves, came to know of you and your work as you were coming up in your role with PFF, and as you kind of built up the podcast there, and now coming over and kind of branching out on your own. How are things going with Check the Mic?
It's been great. We just celebrated our 1 year anniversary. Sam and I, we
awesome.
left this week a year ago. I had been at PFF for 13 years. Sam was closer to 15. So we call ourselves two of the founding fathers of PFF. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. I've seen the feedback from you guys on both ends through the years, which I don't have to deal with anymore, which is great.
I won't lie. A piece of me was going to start the show with, and first we're going to do a thorough breakdown of the PFF grading process.
I'll do it. I'll do whatever you want. I could do it for an hour.
I was going to start out the show by just apologizing to you for maybe some things when I was younger and more immature on a certain app.
Same.
But honestly, my only beef is the grades and the grading system. But I think I would beef anybody that grades, like even Eric, when we're doing draft grades, I'm always telling him like, I don't know about that. But I honestly am on PFF every single day using deep dives, and I tell people that all the time. It's one of the subscriptions that I probably get the most use out of. So my hate for PFF is very specific. And a lot of it also had it when the bias was against us. I am a fan of the Buffalo Bills. And so I'm sure you get it from every fan base in every direction when you were there.
Why do you hate us? We
hate all 32 teams. We hate it. Look, again, it's not my job to defend PFF. I'll just say
you're free. The shackles
the underlying grading is very good.
Mm-hmm.
Going from there to the 0 to 100 grade, especially in small sample sizes, especially in preseason. But we used to get the most heat early in the season. When it's like, why? It's like in baseball saying, why is this guy hitting 400 through 2 weeks? You think he's a 400 hitter? It's like, no, he's hitting 400 through 2 weeks. It's data, right? So anyway, overall, it's good, but you got to learn how to use it, right? You got to learn how to use the data the right way.
Yeah, you're right.
But no, congratulations to you and Sam. It's been a lot of fun taking in your show there, and now being able to have fun and everything that you guys are doing. It's been great to see.
Yeah.
But, obviously, we're now through the hard part here. We went through the dog days. You and in your former baseball life, you get the dog days of summer. We have that stretch in the off season where it's really, really rough. Then you get the excitement of camp, but it only whets the appetite so much. It's not real football.
We still haven't seen Josh Allen actually play football.
Yeah, Josh Allen hasn't actually taken a real snap yet. Yeah. Just at a high level, where are your expectations with this team? What are you thinking as we're coming into the year here?
Yeah, I mean, they're high, obviously. I think I imagine it's really difficult either as a fan or as Brandon Beane or anyone else trying to build that team, being so close year over year, and then saying, do you make extreme changes? Do you make tweaks? And I felt like this year was tweaks, but at areas that affected them in previous years. Depth on the defensive side of the ball, depth on the defensive line, the secondary. And so I respect that about what Brandon Beane has done, what the Bills have done. I really liked before last year. It's really tough for football fans to see veterans go out the door and see a youth movement and not be negative about that. Even though there's
that
a
assume
history,
it's a downgrade.
Right. And the Chiefs took a step back to go take us 2 steps forward back in 2022, and they accidentally won the Super Bowl. The Bills last year on paper looked like, hey, we're moving on from a lot of these veterans. We're getting younger, and they're just as good. And now you're sitting here coming into this offseason with one starting spot, a bunch of free agent signings, one starting spot open, maybe heading into the draft. They draft Maxwell Harrison. It's like, this team's pretty good. So I love the depth. I love the returning offensive line, the depth on the defensive line that they've added. The secondary depth is already being challenged, but I like the way they attacked it this offseason. And, of course, Josh Allen pulling it all together. So, yeah, as confident as ever that the Bills are going to be right there in the end again this year.
And kind of in that same vein, you talked about how it's a little bit tough for fans when you don't do anything really exciting, right? They didn't make any huge splashes, but then you look ahead, and I kind of want your view on the long-term outlook for the Bills, because you talked about them kind of having that year where they had to take a little bit less on the roster for some of the cuts they made and developing some young guys, right? And they made that transitional year and still had a lot of success in that transitional year, similar to what KC did. But then this offseason, you extend Josh Allen, Khalil Shakir, Terrell Bernard, Greg Rousseau, you get James Cook done, Christian Benford, right? You got this core of young guys now extended, and it wasn't sexy. You didn't bring in anything new and flashy. You didn't go trade for a big name defensive end, but you got a lot of key pieces. What do you think those pieces were all worthy of extending and making the core for this team going forward? Or do you think they are going to need maybe a more elite level of player at each of those spots?
I think both is true. I mean, not necessarily at those spots. I love that they've locked up those players. I mean, what they have a couple starters on offense, not under contract heading into next year, a couple starters on defense, one of them Joey Bosa, and they've obviously future-proof that either through the draft or with free agency. So they're set up well for the future. And I think once you get those deals done early, unlike, the Cowboys and some other teams where you end up losing $6 to $8 million along the way, you get those deals done early, and then you have the flexibility. So I think they've set themselves up. You got the Josh Allen contract. You'll always have a little bit of cap flexibility with him. You get those core pieces. How many non-first rounders in there with Benford and Shakir? Yeah. I mean, that's great. I mean, that's if you're taking 3rd, 4th, 5th rounders, 6th rounders, and signing them to long-term deals, and they deserve it, and you're doing that early, that is great team building. So you're setting yourself up, and then look, if the right receiver comes free or the right pass rusher comes free, and you want to go make a trade, you have enough depth built up that you can give up some draft capital to get there. So I think they're in a really good spot for how they've built this, and it took a reset year last year. And they didn't really take a step back. They may have been even better, but it took, what felt like a reset year when it was happening to get to this point.
So as you look at that roster and who's here, as you guys are preparing, you're doing obviously a lot of work across the league, whether it's preparing for the draft, going through free agencies, looking at all the teams, maybe some of the newer faces here. There's a lot of returners. There wasn't a ton of new additions, but you talked about some of those investments in the D-line or Hairston. Maybe who stands out to you as a bit of a sleeper or somebody that you're excited to see that's new, whether it's a draft pick or a free agent addition?
It's really the entire defensive line to me. And look, the Eagles won the Super Bowl, and I know we all tend to do this in the media or just fans.
Just do what they did.
The Eagles they beat Mahomes with a 4-man rush. Everybody do that as if they reinvented football. Like the Eagles have been building their team like that for a decade plus. They just executed it really well. But that hasn't changed in football. And the Bills were doing this a couple years ago too, right? They had a nice 8-man rotation on that defensive line, and maybe it wasn't at the same spot the last couple of years. I feel like they're back to that. So whether it's Joey Bosa, who I still want to bubble wrap until January, whether it's Bosa, whether it's the 2 suspended guys when they get back, right, preparing that, or just the way the draft fell. And I don't know if this ends up being good or bad or whatever, but when a player has first-round hype at some point and then they go in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round, Landon Jackson, TJ Sanders, and Deion Walker, all at some point, I know there's a lot of people doing drafts, but at some point they were discussed in the first-round mix, and they got 3 of those guys beyond the first round. Different body types, different styles. I'm a sucker for that, right? A long end like Landon Jackson, the length of Gregory Rousseau, the size of Deion Walker and Jordan Phillips, the undersized rushers in a Sanders and an Oliver. So I just love the mix of the defensive line, and I think that's given them just a ton of options at a crucial position where you can't afford to have too many injuries, but now you have the depth to be able to handle that.
Along that
in the way that they did that, a big piece I enjoyed was that the numbers of it, that it's not all the eggs in one basket of like, hey, we really need this guy to pan out. When you add you keep Rousseau and Oliver, you add 3 free agents on the D line and 3 draft picks. I just need one out of each of them to hit. I just need one draft pick and 1 free agent to hit to give me 4 guys on that 3rd and 7 in the playoff game to go at it. And I like that they didn't try to put all their eggs into like, hey, this huge one signing. They said, hey, we're going to put some things out there. We believe in all 6 guys, but really we just need 1 to hit in each area.
Yeah, and the 1-year prove it deal for a guy with such a high ceiling as Bosa has hit before is such a great value for a team in the position you're in. Like, you want that guy to go out and earn a contract somewhere else and thank him on the way out for the Lombardi trophy, right, that he helped bring. So, but along that defensive line, I've been pumping this kind of idea all summer long here that I think Greg Rousseau is like right on the cusp of being considered part of that elite tier of edge player. But it's weird, right? Because he's not your crazy sack guy like a Myles Garrett or Micah Parsons, but he's really very close, a couple plays away from being a double-digit sack guy just a year ago. But also then you add in his run defense and the length, like you talked about, and some of the plays that maybe it's not a stat sheet play, but he's making the play with that length. Am I crazy? Am I just too fanboying a little bit for Greg Rousseau, or is he right there?
No, I think he is. We did our breakout players on Check the Mic a few months back, and I cheated, right? I said, Greg Rousseau, breakout player. And I said, it's my show. I can create whatever criteria I want. He's already good. I think he's on the cusp of stardom, right? So I'm with you on that. And look, I think when do they play New England? Is it week 5 or whatever it is? They should let's test the arm length thing, line him up over Will Campbell 25 times and go get him and see if, the T-Rex arms can actually block Rousseau. I'm just telling you, the length that he brings to the table, probably the most difficult length player to block in the NFL right now. So that is a unique skill set. He is a hammer against the run, makes big plays. I think he's been very good. And if he takes another step, and look, it's edge rushers, it's loaded, right? The defensive player of the year odds, it's like the top 6, 7, 8 are all edge rushers. It's tough to crack the top 5 or top 8, but if he's in that top 8 to 10, wouldn't surprise me. And I think he's right on the verge of doing that.
I agree.
Yeah, I think if you look at the challenging part is for most fans, it's you could take that same list and if you just ranked it top to bottom in sacks, it's pretty much that stat like is what skews so much of it, and that he always floats in any pass rush win rate or pass rush productivity or any of the different
all the PFF stuff helps, guys. That's where it helps your argument.
That's right. PRP, he's got a really nice PRP. So
all of those, he floats in that like 15 to 20 range, like a top 20 pass rusher, but he's also the best run defender of any of those guys that are there. So like, that's the part that a lot of fans don't like. Oh yeah, it's great that he keeps contained. But like Trey Hendrickson doesn't keep contained. Like he doesn't play the run at all. Rousseau's great at it, and he's 90% of the pass rusher. So if he can get one of those, just a couple of clutch sacks in the moments that are there, a couple of those that, just a little favorable areas where instead of him creating the pressure that somebody else cleans up for the sack, he gets some of those. I think he could easily put together a 15 sack season and all of a sudden still be an elite run defender and get maybe more of the attention that he's on the verge of being able to get.
Can I just say this is a great time to plug Havoc rate? Because in Havoc rate, he's 9th, right behind Greg Rousseau, or right behind Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett is 83.8. Rousseau is 83.6, which takes into account everything. Like, I do think we over prioritize sacks because they can be so fluky, right? Like if you go back and watch Rousseau's tape, it's really close to him getting over the threshold of being a double-digit sack guy when you sort the columns. But when you take in the batted passes and all the type of plays that associate to Havoc, which all matter, he is up there already in that top 10. And I agree. I think that if a couple different plays go his way, we're talking about him entirely differently going into this year in the hype. And Brandon Beane's probably paying a little bit more, even to get that extension done if he would have got double digits. So it's all good.
Don't get me on my soapbox about sacks being overrated. I mean,
let's go.
Like 4% of the entire all the guys pass rushes.
Pass rushes, exact.
Even the best guys, like whether you have 14, 17, or 20, those guys are probably rushing the passer for 800 snaps that year, and like you're deciding that those 3 or 6 snaps are the difference of who had the better season. No, like all the things that they drew the attention and the double blocks and the pressures and the hits and like all the things they create for the rest of the defense in the other 782 snaps matter an awful lot. It's wild.
You summed it up. That's it. It's the disruption, snap after snap, and then like Myles Garrett, the stress that he puts on tackles.
Yes.
Because he's like, they change their pass sets. Oh, they can't even pass set the same way because they have to try to block him. It has a big effect on, on a lot of parts.
Actually, Williams right here. Aaron and Steve did just become best friends. This has been a fight that I've been dealing with Bills Mafia for years now. Going back, Jerry Hughes, right? Jerry Hughes always had high pressure rates, didn't get double-digit sacks, so people didn't think he was worth the money. But PFF, again, going back to them, you look at, besides Joe Burrow, every other passer that is facing pressure, the statistics drop by like 30%, no matter what you're looking at, whether it's completion percentage, GPA, whatever it is. When they're getting pressure, it all declines. And so pressure is a good thing, and it doesn't get stated enough. You're going to get more pressures than you're going to get home, right? And obviously every play should end in a sack. Nobody's arguing against it, but we could have a whole show about this if you wanted, Steve.
I've been over a decade fighting this battle, so I'm ready. I'm prepared whenever you guys want to do that.
So you've given us the good side. Yeah. Let us know what is your biggest area of concern going into this season, and what could be the bugaboo that stops us from finally getting over the top.
Is this where we talk about safety? So the turnover stuff, the reliance on turnovers, and I know that the general analysis year over year, coaches say we preach turnovers, we focus on turnovers, but you know 1 year you're 4th and 1 year you're 20th, and did you just not preach it enough? They're generally fluky and should be used in analysis. The Bills have been pretty consistent with it, especially since Joe Brady came over. I think Allen has done a little better job taking care of the ball offensively. The defense has done a pretty good job, but in big games, that defense given up a lot, right? They're getting picked apart. The Ravens picked them apart. They got the 3 turnovers. If you could bank on, if you knew you were going to get the 3 fumbles or 3 turnovers, the picks and the fumbles, if you knew you were going to get the turnovers, fine. It is, that part's difficult, right? So I thought the back 7 had some issues in the big games. And look, just like the Chiefs, it's like Super Bowl or bust. Right now, it's the Bills. It's like get to the Super Bowl or bust, right? We're getting picky here. So that's what's picky on my end. Back 7 consistency, the defense putting it all together in those big games against the best offenses. They're great against the Dolphins. They've figured out the Dolphins offense. To me, even when the Dolphins offense was cooking, they figured that out. Yeah. Can they get to a point where they slow down the Chiefs, slow down the Ravens, slow down the Bengals if they run into them in the playoffs? That's the concern. Is this defense outside of turnovers? Are they better than middle of the pack? And I think that's a fair question on that side of the ball.
Yeah, it seems pretty solid that the Bills want the Taylor Rapp, Cole Bishop thing to work on the back end. They're going to go into this season. And I don't know that it's fair that we've gotten a fair assessment of them this summer because we haven't seen really the full starting defense. That front 7 that we talked about earlier that we're all excited about, we haven't seen that true rotation yet this summer. And I think that is going to matter to that back half of the defense a little bit this year. But the position I want to really kind of pinpoint with you is because I think there's a lot of talk about safety because we're so unsure about what Cole Bishop is. And it's been up and down when we have seen him. And I think everybody's tired of Damar Hamlin, even though I think it's adequate floor of decent safety play. But the spot I'm probably the most concerned about right now is cornerback 2. We have Trey White injury kind of influx. The last time we saw him, he wasn't looking himself, right? He was getting better as the year went on with the Ravens, but he's not all pro Trey White anymore. But it seemed like he was kind of winning that job even before the Hairston injury. I don't know if Hairston would have beat him out as the summer went on, but now he's on injured reserve. That is a position in a lot of flux right now. You have Ingram maybe is going to be the starter at safe or at cornerback 2 if Trey can't go week 1. How do you see that position shaking out? Is that a spot that, is Hairston going to come back healthy this year, do you think, and he'll just win that job? Is that injury real impactful? What do you see this playing out at cornerback 2 for the Bills?
I'm not sure how hurt Hairston is. I was assuming he was going to win the job. And my feeling, and it's unfortunate with the Benford injury in the AFC Championship, of course, it felt like, hey, we're not playing zone the same way we do against this team. Like, we're going to man up. We're getting after it. It felt like they were dusting off a fresh playoff defensive game plan against the Chiefs. And they were going to live or die by it, right? It was going to be, hey, Pat, you've got worthy with a step down the field because he's fast. You hit him, fine. If you miss him, though, we're gonna make it a low percentage pass. And they just didn't get to carry that out because of Kyer Elam. And it, you could see the length. I'm sorry.
No, it's just painful to remember.
I know. I get it.
Him tripping over himself.
I'm watching him tumble backwards on that crossing route in my mind right now.
And that's what he was better as a man corner coming out too.
That's literally the thing he was supposed to be able to do.
Right. I know. It was unfortunate.
It was tough.
But Benford obviously could play. It felt like Hairston was like, all right, you've got your 4-2 receiver. We've got our 4-3 corner. We can cover him. You don't draft to beat one team, but you're constructing your team to at this point, right? If you're the Bills, like you might be able to lean in certain directions to make sure that you're filling spots to beat the Chiefs, to beat the Ravens, the Bengals, these teams that you have to beat. So I think when it comes down to it, they'll try to be more aggressive. They'll use the size that they have. Dorian Strong has size. Ingram has size. Try to play a little bit more press man and maybe be a little more boom or bust through that, force more incompletions. I've got a little theory. I like turnovers, but a third down incompletion is like a turnover as long as it's not 3rd and 3 in today's NFL. It's like a turnover, and you get your incompletions from playing man. You get your turnovers from playing zone. And so if you can man up on 3rd down and just force some tighter window throws, get off the field. It's not as good as a turnover, but it's, getting the ball back to your offense. And I feel like they might lean that way a little bit more, and it might be a little more boom or bust when it comes to man coverage and trusting some of those young guys with some length and, see how they do.
And everybody likes a short field, but when you have Josh Allen, I'll take it back at the 20 out for punt.
Oh, yeah.
Just as much. Totally fine.
Absolutely.
Totally fine. No, so we appreciate you very much, Steve. You've been very generous with your time. Let us know what you have coming up next and check the mic. We pre-recorded because I'm traveling, doing some college football travel this weekend. Nice.
We pre-recorded our season predictions, which are coming out on Monday. They might be favorable. They might be fun.
Might be worth tuning in
for the audience. Yes, they might be. So Monday at 9 a.m., check the mic on YouTube. And then we're just previewing the season. We preview every game. We review every game on Check the Mic, YouTube, podcast, wherever you listen to it, just in season mode pretty much right now.
Honestly, I got to say last season, it was, Monday, Tuesday, as I'm breaking down the game that I've watched, getting ready for the preview show. I always watch your guys' content, both the preview and the review shows. And it was fantastic. It was one of my favorite watches all season long and part of my weekly ritual as a fan of getting ready and staying informed. So I appreciate it.
It's all we're trying to do, cover every team as honestly as we can, even though I have my Allen jersey that I had to buy.
Like I said,
we won't tell anyone.
All the extra help we
Unbiased
can get.
Analysts here.
Yeah.
All right. Appreciate you, Steve. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. All right. So obviously a lot of fun to be able to have Steve on and somebody that we've, gone back and forth with and poked around with online for a long time. So it's nice to finally have him on the show and be able to have some fun with it. And, it's both reassuring and frustrating to know that, all right, well, like other smart football people also are excited about an awful lot and also have a lot of the same fears that I do of what's there. And I will say, I think that the investments in the defensive line is the acknowledgement of like, hey, maybe one of these seasons we won't be top 10 in turnovers. Like we've been more consistent than most teams to be able to do that. And being able to go through and share all the different things that like, hey, maybe this will be the year that we won't. So then being able to turn and go through the, investment in the defensive line will let us maybe offset that. So if we have, a big stretch where we're able to go through and, shift towards more production from the pass rush, better defensive line help, then maybe we could pivot and be able to have, an offset where some kind of downgrade in the number of turnovers could help us out.
I think it'll actually just spur more continuous opportunities for turnovers. I think one of the things there is consistency here in Buffalo in the turnovers, and I don't think it's accidental, and I don't think it's just coaching up turnovers. I know the coaches say that and like, hey, we want to take the ball away, and that is important to like speak that and constantly talk about it. I know people hate coach speak, but and probably a lot of people hate the way Von Miller used to talk, but those things actually work. Like speaking positivity out into the world, like I believe and that stuff. But besides that, I think that this defense is predicated on havoc. You know, I was talking about havoc rate earlier when talking about Greg Rousseau, and the Bills have been consistently one of the more havoc rate teams, tackles for loss, things like that. I think McDermott gets this, and I should do a breakdown video of all the ways it's such a hypocritical view of who he is versus what he actually shows us who he is. He's way more of a progressive thinker and coach than he gets credit for. It's always this like he's conservative and buttoned up and plays soft zone and just plays these vanilla things. The scheme has been very impactful in creating havoc over the years, and he's actually been kind of trending a lot of the way other NFL teams play defenses over the last 7-8 years. And so I think that plays part into it, and then you add in a better rotation to finally get the pass rush that they need. Last year at this time, or really maybe not at this time, because I think we had more faith on paper of the defensive end room, but early in the season the biggest problem wasn't necessarily the defensive backs, even though they were giving up the big third downs. It was the lack of pass rush, right? Like we couldn't get home. So maybe this year the concern going into the season is the safeties. But even if you went with Rapp and Hamlin, you have the same safeties. I think you're better at corner, at least for the long-term outlook of the season. You got back Milano and Bernard, and finally Milano looks healthy, and I think that's going to help also in the coverage. And so if you can get some pressure on the quarterback, even if you went back with the guys that you had last year in the back half of that defense, I think it looks better. If you're getting more pressure on the quarterback consistently, pass rush is probably slightly more impactful than coverage, or at least it has a higher assistance rate to coverage more often, right? We talk about it all the time. Pressure impacts QBs. They throw the ball, they misthrow it. They have to throw, like Steve said, lower percentage throws. And that's what McDermott's kind of feasted on. So sort of long story short here, I think some of the consistency they've had with turnovers has been their ability to create havoc and be disruptive to a quarterback. And I think they can ramp that up this year.
Yeah. And there's a lot of pieces. I mean, in the chat, Sal's talking about stop rotating the defensive line every minute. That defensive line that Steve talked about the Eagles winning the Super Bowl with, they rotate more than the Bills. So obviously rotating defensive line isn't the problem. The Eagles rotate more than the Bills, and they won the Super Bowl doing it twice. Both of their Super Bowl championships, they had lower percentage of snaps of their best pass rushers. Jalen Carter plays fewer snaps than Ed Oliver and Gregory Rousseau. So that's not it. So being able to take a look here, I think we're going to get into our last two sponsor segments here to be able to talk about Cutdown Day and the practice squad. But before we get into that, make sure if you have any questions you want to go through, producer Colin's going to jump on with us at the end, ask some of the best questions that come in through the chat. But first, we'll start with what's brewing. And, obviously today was Cutdown Day. And I think that the repercussions of coming through the cycle of yesterday's Cutdown Day and who then passed through waivers. So, I don't know. Did you have any big surprises yesterday? I think that a lot of the injury piece of it kind of cleaned some of that up. There wasn't a ton of surprises there. I don't know that, I expected it. It certainly seemed pretty locked in that Terrell Shavers would make it. I was happy when I saw the news that he officially did. Any of the other guys that we were kind of hoping might be able to make a case, it started to fade pretty obviously. Like I think an awful lot of people had the majority of the roster pretty well pegged going into yesterday's Cutdown Day.
Yeah, I think like Hard Knocks definitely gave us some storylines that people were rooting for, right? Like Charlo's, that's fun, right?
Charlo, KJ Hamler, Zach Davidson, all really fun stories.
For sure. But Shaq Thompson is a better linebacker today, right? Like, and somebody that can make an impact on the defensive side of the ball. So to me, there was not a ton of surprise in terms of who actually made the roster. I think the biggest surprise of the news that came out for me yesterday was more that Trey White wasn't on the IR when they started making moves like that. That gave me some optimism that if it's not week 1, it's at least before week 4, right? Because otherwise they would have put him on the IR, or at least in their minds, the way he's progressing, it seems like. Then when he talked today, he didn't say it outright, but he was kind of like, hey, maybe he could be ready for week 1. He didn't want to, make a definitive statement, but that could be really huge with the state of that cornerback room. And when you look at that depth chart with Hairston on IR, you really like to go into that week, even no matter how you feel about Trey White. That's probably the best option you have right now to go into week 1. And so you're probably hoping it.
Yeah. And it was probably a little bit of me wish casting or telling myself what I want to hear, but I won't lie. When I saw Rasul Douglas signed with the Dolphins, I took that as a positive sign for us that like, hey, if they were really nervous, like if we had to put Trey on IR, I actually think he would have been our first phone call. I think that would have been the first phone call was like, all right, he got $3 million from the Dolphins. It's not like he was waiting for some huge offer. No. I think we would have gone to Rousseau and be like, listen, come and help us out here, man. You can step in and play in the system if we need it. And that we still have a first round pick that's coming back. There's no promises, full run of the season, but we got 4 weeks without one of these guys. Can you come in and cover that? And we'll see where it goes from there. And I think that them not doing that and them, obviously I think that assuming the money would have been equal and that we would have matched whatever the top offer was to be able to do that, I feel pretty confident he would have chosen here in winning over Miami and maybe a sneaky dark horse for the number 1 pick. I think that Miami could be a sneaky disaster. We'll see where that one goes. So that's certainly a healthy amount of wish casting and me telling myself what I want to hear. But when I saw that signing, I was like, oh, okay. All right. I feel like that probably would have been our escape hatch if we were really concerned or if there was a serious injury. So obviously now we know it's not season ending. It's not IR worthy. I am a little nervous about, him not being 100%, or even if it's a week where it has to be Dorian Strong or Jamarcus Ingram or whatever it might be, or a Dane Jackson elevation off the practice squad. Having that against Baltimore is not awesome. Like that's not ideal. But I think ultimately the ceiling of this defense is needing the guy with the speed and athleticism of Harrison and getting him back there. So it sounded like you mentioned Bean's presser. His comments there for Harrison sounded pretty optimistic that their expectation is he's ready to go coming off of IR and practicing, and that it might not be instantly week 5, but that it sounds like he's going to be ramping up to be here for the last 2/3 of the season, last 3/4 of the season.
Kind of fun that you're getting Hoyt, Ogunjobi, and Harrison all back there halfway
through
the
season.
Trade deadline. It could be fun for them. But honestly, does it sound kind of weird that it could be a blessing in disguise if they have to play a bigger cornerback like an Ingram versus the run against Derrick Henry? Versus, I don't know if I want to see Trey or Harrison to tackle Derrick Henry.
Very serious. That's a great point. Like Dorian Strong or Jamarcus Ingram are probably, I'd rather them out there
versus
tackling
him at least on that side.
Yeah. I'll take it. We'll see where it goes as we get closer to the week. We'll talk with Cole next week as we get ready for the actual first matchup. But shout out to our guys over at Southern Tier Brewing Company. It's been a ton of fun to work with them already. We're actually in talks with them on maybe doing a live show here coming up, being able to be out there on site at their tap house here in Buffalo, be able to go and have a good time, try out some of their delightful things. So keep an eye out for that as we get ready. But really appreciate working with them and going through there.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Our next element as we go through our next segment is going to be our friends over at William Mattar Law Offices, and we are going to go over with them who's here to help. Maybe some familiar names here in the practice squad signing. So I will say maybe one of the, I don't know if sad is the right term, but one of the roughest parts is 2 of the biggest storylines from Hard Knocks didn't get brought back to the practice squad. Mm-hmm. I was a little bit surprised that Kaliki Latu was the choice over Zach Davidson, but I do think that Davidson is turning 28 this season. He turns 28 during the season. Somebody joked about it in the Discord channel, and I replied that this is not a joke. Honest to God, he needs to give up playing tight end and just full-time focus on being a punter, because punters play well into their 30s, and that there's a lot less rocketing the ball.
Yeah. There's a lot less of those guys.
Yes,
imagine having a punter you could use for something else if you also had.
Well, and like, if you're going to have a guy that you're worried about the holding piece of it, because that's actually one of the biggest issues for the Australian rules football players and the guys coming over is they're not used to catching the ball and the hard snap from the like, hey, he's a tight end. He spent a ton of time in front of the jugs machine catching. He caught passes from Josh Allen. So I'm not even joking. Like, if I was him, I'd take at least a 1-year run at what if I focused full time on being a punter to see if I could turn something around.
We've seen guys switch positions. I don't know if we've ever seen guys switch to a kicking
I'm
position. It
confident
might be
we've
a first.
never seen someone go from tight end to punter, but
Yeah, but definitely interesting that because Davidson was a guy too that going into when everyone's like, oh well, we lost Quinn Morris or we're going to lose Quinn Morris, we don't have a tight end 3. I was thinking at the time like I think he could be tight end 3. Like I actually think he can play tight end in the NFL. So that must mean though they're high on Latu because I do think he would be a fine practice squad break in case of emergency tight end. I think they feel good about the room with the 3 that they have. And Haas showed off a little more ability to maybe catch the football and do something with it. I don't know that I'm not going to buy into one reception, but there might be some there. Like, I don't know that like,
Anthony's Barry Sanders clip. You don't think that he's, although I do think it's fair. If Jackson Haas jukes you in the open field, you have to retire on the spot. That's just the rules.
But I do think that there might be more to it. I know he's a primarily blocking guy and he does that best, but like I think he can also go out and make a catch if you or play some tight end too if you had to have him out there. So that's probably the most interesting one. The one that I was most excited about though was getting Frank Gore Jr. back because he's also been highlighted on Hard Knocks, and so that's a good story that they're monitoring. So that would be a positive one. Frank Gore Jr. coming back, and I actually think he had a really nice preseason. This is such a loaded backfield. He's not going to crack that backfield, and if he does, we're having some pretty bad problems that I don't even want to talk about. But I actually thought, I know there's running backs all over the league, and a lot of guys like theirs, but I thought somebody would take a waiver with that name. And he actually performed pretty well in the reps that he did get. He's a solid, like backup type of guy. The pass protection's not great. He's a little undersized, but I thought somebody would try to take a waiver wire on him.
Yeah, it's just the reality of the NFL in that there's 100 of them that are on rosters around the NFL and another 30 on practice squads. And when every year is a historic draft class of running backs, it's just supply versus demand isn't fair. It's just not the way it works. Shout out to our guy Padden with the Major League quote. I never heard of half of these guys, and the ones I have heard of are way past their prime. Beautifully done. Well played. And there was actually a good question here. Kevin asking, what does a practice squad do? It is very genuine in the title. This is just the idea that when you only have 53 guys on a roster, it's hard to run practices and different functions coming in and out of who's running the practice reps, who's lining up in the different elements, who's learning be scout team for the upcoming matchups that you have, because it's very different when you're playing a game 1 week's Jared Goff and the next week's Jalen Hurts. Like, you got to be prepared for that Lions offense with the stationary quarterback, and they literally run those
plays and looks from the other team. So they do scout ahead to what the other teams are going to most likely run against the Bills, because that scout team is going to run those looks, right? We've heard those stories about them bringing in guys or having Isaiah McKenzie be Lamar Jackson, whatever, trying to replicate those things. So you need some versatile type players to do that type.
So, beyond just literally practicing, then there's the developmental piece. That's the new rule. I think Brandon Beane talked about that in his presser. One of the best rules that came out of the COVID time period was expanding from 10 to 16 practice squad spots and allowing for veterans. Before, you were only allowed guys with no veteran NFL experience, and now you're allowed 6 of those positions. So here you see Shane Buechele was actually one of those guys, shockingly. Dan Feeney, Kendrick Green, 3 of those on offense. On defense, you're going to recognize some of the names here: Jordan Phillips, Dane Jackson, and Jordan Poyer coming back on practice squad. Now you get to have, I know Eric has banged the drum since the moment Deion Walker was drafted that he's not your traditional stout, Linval, Joseph, Ted Washington one tech. He's Jordan Phillips. He's a Jordan Phillips pass rushing guy that just looks like a one tech. Well, who better to help mentor him than literally Jordan Phillips to have there for that pass rush push? And, Aaron brought it up when we were talking with Steve, like, getting those pass rush moments in the big moments when they matter are a big part of this. And obviously we're hoping that the ceiling for Deion Walker is higher than Jordan Phillips, but I do think that I'll be careful saying floor, because you never know when a guy can kind of go south and be a bust here. But I do think that the lower expectation is Jordan Phillips, and that some of the things we saw, some of the reps of him identifying gap schemes and throwing guys aside in run defense is really, really intriguing. We didn't see an awful lot of that from Jordan Phillips. So if we get some of that and the pass rush, I think it could be really exciting. But I know many of us heard about Jordan Phillips. I don't think it was we both predicted Dane Jackson being here. Did you see the Jordan Poyer one coming?
Well, if you're a One Pass member, you might have, and you're in our Discord, but no, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It really does. Especially where he's at 34 years old, the Micah Hyde thing. People can make fun of culture and all that stuff all they want. Sean McDermott's come out since day one, that first press conference, and preach process and culture and stuff like that. And he's built it. It's real. Like, you listen to I know some of the press conferences are just lip service that they give fans, but man, it's been 8 years of guys coming back from other places saying the same exact thing of like, Jordan Phillips said it today. Like, sometimes you go and you have to work with these guys and you're all working. They just don't care in the same way. Guys aren't hanging out. Like, they've built something different, I think, here in Buffalo, that when guys go away, they miss it. And when they come back, they're happy to come back, even if it is at the end of their career, even if it is more to be a mentor than it is maybe to be a game day active player. But I think there's also a section of the fan base, and even within my text messages from friends, of people that are frustrated that the Bills keep doing this type of thing and going back to the well of older players that have played for them. But to me, it's one, coaches are always going to rely back on people that they've been in the trenches with and that they've seen perform, been in battle with. And two, I think it's good roster development and use of these spaces to have guys that have played deep playoff runs in this scheme, that are scheme fits, that maybe have just enough juice left to play a handful of games in case you have a break, in case of emergency situation, like when you had to go out and get AJ Klein out of vacation to play a playoff game. So stacking your roster at important positions with guys that are a step above what AJ Klein was when they brought him back. It's a long season. Every year's a battle against attrition. I don't think there's anything negative that you can put into having guys like that on your practice squad. It's just a net benefit. So people complaining about it, it just makes no sense to me. Like, you kind of said, I don't know if you said it offline or here in the show, but it's having insurance, right? Like, and I don't want to use my insurance. I don't want Jordan Poyer to play. I don't want Dane Jackson to play. But gosh, I can't think of much better insurance to just be hanging out on the practice squad until he might have to.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of times it's hard to think of I got into it with a couple people about just, well, there had to be better people out there. And be like, well, I mean, you got to look at just the sheer numbers of the NFL. 1,696 guys make a roster. That's 53 times 32. Then even beyond there, the developmental spots around the league are the young up and coming players. That's like the next 320 best up and coming players. And then you look at the other six, veteran spots. Let's say like 3 of them on each teams are like, right there, like just below the edge guys like Kendrick Green, like the guys that like, hey, they're the difference between them and being on the roster is really, really thin. That's another 320 guys. Well, at some point here during that exercise, you're getting to those final veteran spots. You're talking about the 2,117th best player. Like, at some point here, like the relative scale of like, okay, well, who's better? What are the other things that are better that are out there that you're looking to see? And like he and I went through a handful of the other unsigned safeties that are out there. And like, listen, a lot of these guys either have never played in the league or are also older guys who have lost a step and aren't there anymore and aren't what you're thinking of.
And never played in this team.
Yes, and it's just not him. And I think that's what a lot of it turns into is when we bring in a guy that's there, it's that, well, I'd rather claim this guy because he could be anything. He could even be Jordan Poyer. Like, it's the mystery box, and anything could be about. And being able to be in that position, I think it's the floor. And that part of that is, I hope none of the guys on the practice squad have to play. I don't want any of them to get called up. Yeah. So if that's the case, I'd rather have the guys who can give mentorship to the guys that are on the team and help build up the guys that are on the 53 versus telling ourselves that everybody's going to be this developmental piece that comes off there. Because there's been 50 other guys who haven't turned into and if we're being honest, our best case scenario off of the practice squad is Jamarcus Ingram, Cam Lewis, and now Terrell Shavers. So even the best case scenario is your 52nd, 51st, and 53rd guys on the roster. Like, just we got to be honest with ourselves of what this is and what those spots will very likely turn into.
Yeah, no, and I mean, yeah, you don't want to be using any of these spots in any significant spot in the season. But also, some of these older vets, isn't there some incentive to sign later on for like a Justin Simmons? Isn't there some incentive to, what is it, week 4 or something like that?
So there's a piece of it where the teams have an incentive not to sign veterans a week 1, because any vested veteran, if you've been on, if you're a vested veteran, which means you have 4 NFLPA seasons logged, it doesn't have to literally be 4, it can be the combination of games, but 4 seasons with 6+ games played, your salary gets guaranteed if you're on a week 1 roster. So an example for the Bills on those fringe areas would be Shaq Thompson. If Shaq Thompson makes the week 1 roster, whether he gets cut in week 3 or week 4, his salary is guaranteed and is already in place. So that's the other direction of a Justin Simmons, or a guy that I'm going to bring up in just a second here, that whether they sign or not is to the team's benefit to wait and see what pans out later on. Players are very much looking for that, but they're also not going to take a lesser amount to be able to do that.
Yeah, and when you're talking about the practice squad too, one other point I want to bring up, and we just saw it a year ago, is you want to have the right kind of guys in that room. It's not necessarily always about like that next guy up. And this is a Mike Edwards tweet in a way, right? Like Mike Edwards kind of was a problem on the practice squad and was not happy that he was on the practice squad. And you want guys that are happy to be there, happy to have that role. And that didn't work out. He ended up having to be removed from the practice squad. He made us think about it, didn't he? Like he requested his trade and was kind of making us
and then went somewhere else, got released, and sadly was literally like 2 weeks away from us needing a safety to come play, and he would have been the guy to come up and play.
Waited. Yeah, but and you don't want that. You don't want a guy that is sitting on that practice squad that's stewing or has resentment or anything like that are willing to play.
Great timing for Pete. Well done. Appreciate you looking this up. Mike Edwards is on the practice squad this year.
He got cut. Yeah. He got cut and brought back on the practice squad. So, I mean, that's just the NFL reality hitting Mike Edwards right now of he is where he is and that's the player he is, but he wasn't ready to hear that a year ago in Buffalo. And that's also just Jordan Poyer's not going to have that. I think in his heart, maybe he wants to play a little bit more, but I think he's willing to just do the role that Micah Hyde did as well. And not everybody's willing for that role.
Yeah, and Andy's spot on the goal. Like the goal is you want the practice squad guys to be just barely less talented than your 53. That way it's less of a drop off if someone gets injured.
It's a great point.
Of course you want that. That's just not the case on any roster around the NFL. Like nobody has people that are just barely below. Like it's just, it's degrees. It's degrees as you go down, and there's way more Shane Buechele's and Steven Gosnell's and guys like that on practice squads and Zion Logues than there are guys who are like just barely there, because the guys who had that kind of higher end potential made the roster. That's the whole thing about.
I think the margins are slimmer though. Like on the bottom, the gap between Josh Allen and Shane Buechele's large, but I don't know that the gap between Mitch Trubisky and Shane Buechele's large.
Correct, but that's the whole point,
right?
Like the people look at this practice squad as but you're not developing the next really impactful player. I'm like, hey, any of the guys who are like, they work their way up to like, oh man, now they're going to be consistent roster guys instead of back and forth. And we've had all those guys over the years who've gone to Ilianku, the most recent guy, and Brandon Bryant before that, you'll be released and re-added and released and re-added. There's a reason that those guys are in that spot. The guys who have higher potential to really develop, those are the guys who are the Terrell Bernards, who like didn't play the rookie year, but then had the higher end potential. Those guys don't ever go on the practice squad.
No,
those guys don't ever go to that spot. So
those are real starters. Yeah.
Now the difference between guys on the practice squad and the 46th guy on a roster, sure. Yes, that range is there. There are not guys floating on practice squads who are just barely below starters.
No.
They're just barely below the backups. And just barely below the depth guys and the third running backs and the fifth cornerbacks and things like that. That's where the degrees of separation, you're spot on. Their difference between the guy who barely made the roster and barely didn't make the roster, 100%. Those are not too big of a difference.
The problem for the Bills right now is a couple of their starting positions are hovering in that area of like, maybe are they starters? We don't know. We hope that
they're
is
a starter for us.
Yeah, so I don't know. But it's going to be interesting. But you said you had somebody in mind.
One last spot here. So there is a sneaky bonus spot that has not been decided yet. So right now the Bills have 16 names on their practice squad. Well, Travis Clayton is part of the International Pathways program. He does not count against that 16. There is one open spot on the practice squad that has not been decided yet.
Saving it for you?
I checked again right before the show. I was not claimed by any team. So I'm eligible to sign on the practice squad. It's there to call my people. So I think I saw a defensive end named Andre. That's all I have. I don't know if I remember. The rest. I saw someone be reported that they may be the addition. We'll see tomorrow. And then one other name that's been poked around was one Gabriel Davis. And I was curious. That was one where I almost thought he was going to be in the Ron. Thank you, Andre Jones, defensive end Andre Jones. Literally,
I love that guy. Huge fan.
The end of my knowledge about that gentleman ends right there. His name is defensive end Andre Jones.
Dude, seriously, I've been watching him since high school.
Big fan of his work. So we'll learn more about him if he gets claimed tomorrow. And if he doesn't get claimed tomorrow, I'm not going to learn anything about him. I'm going to let other people learn about him. But I will say, I did wonder for a minute if the Jordan Phillips path of like, hey, let's hurry up and add him now, and then he could go on. If he you could sign him, but he didn't pass his physical, so he was eligible for the physically unable to perform list. I almost wondered if there was going to be some shenanigans that way, because Gabe Davis, although, again, there's arguments about the degree or level of player, he is an NFL roster caliber player. When healthy, he is going to be on a roster for several years to come here. And that, yes, did we probably get a little over our skis of, was he going to be a wide receiver 2, and was he worth a $10 million a year, $13 million a year contract that Jacksonville gave him? Maybe not. Maybe that's not the ceiling of a player like that. But he is absolutely an NFL roster caliber player. And because of the deal he signed in Jacksonville, he ended up with over $20 million from them for playing less than one season. And he has offset language in his contract. So no matter what he signs for, short of a team paying him more than $11 million for this year, which I think it's fair to say that's probably not going to occur, there's no reason for him to sign for anything other than the minimum to help his new team, because he gets the difference of that from Jacksonville no matter what. So I have kind of thought that short of somebody like a Pittsburgh, where they have DK Metcalf and then not a lot else, I kind of thought at some point somebody was going to give him a shot for like a real contributing, maybe starting role as like a third outside receiver. Now that doesn't seem to be in the cards, do you think we will see Mr. Gabriel Davis back in a Buffalo Bills uniform?
It's a tough one, because I do think he's still recovering from injury, and I don't know that signing him right now, this would be a plan for later in the season. Fans probably don't want to hear this when we're talking about those margins of practice squad guys or not. I think Gabe Davis, when healthy, and I don't know if he will be even this year fully healthy, I think Gabe Davis healthy is better than Tyrell Shavers, but I don't want to get beat up by the internet. But I would take him as wide receiver 5 today if healthy. But I don't think he'd still be available in free agency if he wasn't still recovering from this injury. There's no incentive for a team right now. If he's not going to be part of that first 4-week plan, there's not a ton of incentive for teams right now. If everybody knows that it's a minimum vet deal, I'm sure there's many deals out there for him that of like, hey, here's some deals.
No joke, maybe double digit.
Yeah. We know that he's visited multiple teams. I wouldn't be surprised if all those teams have some framework of something of like, hey, we're not ready yet. You're not ready yet. So there's no need to rush this. But when we get to this point, the deal's ready to go. We'd love to have you here. I think those conversations are going on in the background for Gabe Davis. I do think at some point this year, we will see action on it. And I could see it being the Buffalo Bills bringing him in. I don't know that he's going to come and sit on the practice squad, though. Behind it, I do think he would want to push for that role that he originally had, which is wide receiver 4 or 5. And there is, as high as we are on a Terrell Shavers, and early in the offseason, we were super high on the idea of Elijah Moore. Didn't really see it in what we were able to see, but clearly the Bills still felt good. They didn't try to move him. They didn't walk away from that deal. And Curtis Samuel, another one that was still unable to get on the field, but still found his way onto this 53-man roster. There's a lot after you get out of that top 3, and we're still dealing with the Shakir injury. We don't know where that'll be, but after you get out of that top 3, there's a ton of unknown. And we're kind of wish casting that Curtis Samuel will be healthy, and maybe Elijah Moore will catch on and have a John Brown resurrection to his career here in Buffalo, and that Shavers really is the one-handed catch that we saw in some of the things that we've seen against second and third string defenses, that'll translate to the first string. We'll see that level of athleticism from him, but we don't know. And I do think teams know what you're going to get out of a healthy Gabe Davis.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that all the other pieces, his run blocking, and those elements of, yes, of course, there's concerns with why he's not a top end player, but I think also people forget, like, Terrell Shavers dropped the first pass of that preseason game. Like, people remember the awesome one-handed catch, but literally his first target was dropped, like, right to him, and he dropped the ball. So it's not like we need to be realistic about what Terrell Shavers is. I'm excited. I think it's an awesome story. I'm very, very hopeful that he can continue to develop and be a roster caliber player. But I do think that very rarely do you see guys there. And I was just going to bring up John Robert here on Facebook, bringing up that Matt Perino and many others shared today that Khalil Shakir was back practice. Did not have a non-contact jersey on. I noticed he had regular color jersey on. So obviously a great sign.
But we still don't know
out from week 1
what that injury is, where it's at. We've seen guys get injured early in the year and take some time. I remember a couple of years ago, Ed Oliver had that ankle injury. Yeah. He was still practicing, he was still playing, but the injury still impacted.
But he wasn't the same. He wasn't his full. What does that? I think Stefania Bell over at ESPN always says, like, don't confuse return to play with return to performance.
Correct.
Like that they could be good enough to play, but not good enough at their peak level of performance. And that it's important to differentiate between those two things.
So I want to see him. I haven't seen him in a while. I'm hoping he is. I hope that performance is back, because Khalil Shakir is one of my favorite players on the team. And it would fill a lot of concerns that I'm going to have here as we get through the longest week. Here is all your technology going off, Greg. Greg looks concerned, like all of his technology just started blowing up on him at once. But we are approaching. What's that?
I'm so confused at what combination of words I said that just made that go off. I'm very, very confused.
I love when you're confused. We could make a GIF out of it. Confused Greg is a running GIF.
I make really good faces when I get confused. Yeah. But you are right. It is time for everyone's favorite segment. It is the question of the show with our man Colin Ritchie. Colin, producer Colin, how are things going?
Things are going great. We've got a lot of great engagement in the chat. Lots of commentating on, Sean McDermott, Gabe Davis. You guys just brought up. That's always a hot topic.
There's some healthy Sean McDermott discussion going on, I noticed.
Oh, yeah. Comparisons to Andy Reid and getting fired from Philadelphia. Do the Eagles regret that decision? Or are the Bills going to regret firing McDermott when they do it next year after losing the Super Bowl? It's not even week 1 yet, and we're already back on the fire Sean McDermott train. So time's a flat circle.
Discord's ready for it. We've been doing the fire McDermott all.
We're ready.
It's a shtick.
You don't have to get ready if you stay ready.
That's right. Our first question comes from RC's Auto and Engineering. I wonder what happens with the roster when the week 6 suspensions come back, injuries, trade deadline comes up. Obviously, the suspensions are a couple weeks away from coming back. But who are some guys on the roster bubble that you think are fighting for a roster spot in week 7 when Hoyt and Ogunjobi come back?
I'll let you disappoint everyone here.
Why am I going to disappoint everyone? I think it's going to be all these guys that were on the bubbles already that were questionable to make the team going into it. It could be a Shavers. It could be Shaq Thompson. Could be a guy that they maybe pull off just and put him back on the practice squad. And I hate to say it, and I want Greg to knock on his mahogany, there's also going to be injuries by then, where the roster is going to be in flux 6-7 weeks into the season. People will be on IR. Things will be changing by the roster by then. Hopefully it's not too bad. And we are having these conversations like, who are we going to remove from the roster that we hopefully will be able to stash? That's the conversations I'm hoping to have, but I've been doing this a long time, and I know that come that period of time of the season, the roster is going to look entirely different than it does right now. But it's going to be all the people that we were concerned weren't going to make the 53, and that we weren't going to be able to get back on the practice squad.
100%. That's exactly right. If everyone is healthy, I do think that there's a question, and I think Pete and several there's a line of people all letting us know. I don't think it's crazy that because it's defensive line that are coming back that you would look there. I don't think the obvious releases are in the defensive line group, but I also don't know that we go to 11 or 12 in that group. How about this? It's possible we go to 11. I feel pretty confident we don't go to 12. Now I will say
mid-season Epinesa trade to clear up some space.
Maybe that's always a possibility. I also think the in-season part, Kyle will have to yell at me for what I'm about to say. It's easier to have in-season shenanigans because everyone is playing through something. So you can very easily be like, hey, that wrist thing you were going to try to play through, we're actually going to put you on IR here and let you get right.
Yeah, let's clean it up.
Go heal up, and we'll let you know, Dwayne, if we need you to come back active. You just take your time. Take your time, get right. So I do think that there's a little more shenanigans that can take place with that kind of stuff because guys legitimately do get dinged up in season, and that can let you. So I don't know that it has to be releasing Dwayne Carter, releasing Javon Solomon, releasing Jamarcus Ingram, or even a Charles Shavers. I think it can be kind of not even a wink, just like an overly conservative IR stash that you can afford to do because we're bringing in guys of that caliber.
Yep. Great point.
We have another question from Sweet Spike. Is there any reason to watch the most recent episode of Hard Knocks they're referring to? I didn't enjoy the other episodes. I thought they were really boring.
So, one, I think any fan should watch because it's just a lot of fun, like slow motion Josh Allen and stuff like that, which is great. So I will say I thought the third episode was better than the first two. I thought there was some better storylines, some more interesting pieces as they really got into some of the football side of things. And I thought this fourth episode was probably between that, probably better than the first two, maybe not quite as good as the third one. Some cool stuff about Jimmy Charlo's family, and they got into was it Chris Hess who does the like super slow-mo 8-camera video stuff on Josh Allen being an alien, and hear Patton talk about the quarterback biomechanics stuff was awesome. Yeah. Dude, I could have watched an hour straight of just slow motion Josh Allen stuff of watching and they even did a really cool montage of throws from his rookie season, second year, third year, and showing the progression of him, like his chest not moving and him just flicking the ball like this, and then like starting to rotate his shoulders. And then the last one where it's like all the way through. And I think, Aaron knows this better than I do, but like seeing somebody going from being like a talented golfer with potential to like really putting everything together and watching that slow motion stuff, I thought that was really cool. So I don't think there's been a ton of drama or a ton of like super amazing storytelling, but it's been Hard Knocks, and I'm a Bills fan, so I've watched every second. I've watched every episode more than twice.
Yeah, I think like most things, when it's our team, we probably are over judgmental of the thing that we're seeing, whether it's the games or whatever. And I think Bills fans are sort of being that way with Hard Knocks. Also, there's just not. We said this on the show before. There's just not the same drama for a team that is coming off consecutive division wins and going to AFC championships, and the idea is that this is a Super Bowl caliber team where the most important positions on the team are pretty figured out, and everything's
the ones with quarterback battles are the best.
That's the best.
Like those are by far the best Hard Knocks. But
a
like
team in flux trying to get over that hump is a way more intriguing storyline than like this team's probably going to make a deep playoff run again. and they're bringing it. They brought everyone back. They signed everyone again. Like there's no big time free agent. There was nothing super sexy. Even the Cook thing, which was probably the drama they were looking for, wasn't. They signed him and they moved on there. So I thought it's enjoyable. My kids are enjoying watching it. I enjoy that it's on because my kids are at these pivotal ages where they're Bills fans and they go to school and they do all those Bills things, but they could still switch teams. It's still open where some of their friends are Eagles fan drifting towards the Eagles, and some like Lamar Jackson. Like they're all Bills fans, but I think there's some other alliances forming out there. This propaganda is helping solidify this in my household, and it's really cool. And I do think they've shown some of the personality of the team. Really, McDermott. I think this last episode was heavy McDermott. You saw some of the inside conversations with Bean. I think somebody said it here. It was more internal stuff that you're used to seeing from Hard Knocks, which is more throwback to Hard Knocks. The one knock I will give that episode, Greg, and I don't know if you felt this way, is it felt like the cut scenes, there was not a lot of like segue into they just like cut and went to a different topic, and I was like, and like even at the end it just like cut off, and I was like, oh yeah, it's over. Okay. Yeah. Felt that way.
Going back one topic, great call by John Robert. I do think that there is enough functionality with Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakir returning punts and Ray Davis and Ty Johnson returning kicks that I don't think Brandon Codrington is a guaranteed roster spot. I think he is definitely one of the people that would be right there. Maybe him and Terrell Shavers might be the first two that would come up if things were to happen with the suspensions and Max Harrison coming back.
Yep.
All right. One last question. What we got?
Yeah, I'll say with Hard Knocks too, really quick. You get to see the behind the scenes of a Bills preseason win finally as well. So
much better than 38.
Celebrating going on and stuff. The celebrating when Zach hit Davidson hit his, and seeing the team get excited for Buechele kind of going off. That's all fun stuff.
Yeah, Jason brought up the McGrady and Carter talk with McDermott. It was kind of cool as well.
It was cool. Yep.
All right, last question. Pat and Plays has been very active in the chat. So throw something in that he said. Awesome. McDermott constantly evolves as a head coach. The hate makes no sense. What kind of evolving for this defense can you see this year? Is it with Hoyt coming back from suspension in 6 weeks? Is it more big nickel and dime stuff with Cam Lewis and Jordan Hancock? Where are you envisioning is the wrinkle for Buffalo's defense this year that we haven't seen yet?
I don't want to start another show, but if you were allowing me to wish cast what I want this defense to do, man, it's I want things to get spicy. I want the way I envision this front seven specifically is guys that can stunt, simulated pressures, bringing pressures, getting more blitzes going. I think you have two linebackers that could be some of the best blitzers in the league in Milano and Bernard, and those are interchangeable pieces. I think you throw Taron Johnson in there as well. That's an interchangeable blitz piece, and they can all cover. And so that adds some complexity to the that's not making up words. But you can add some wrinkles to the defense to just get a quarterback off their spot just a little bit. And I think all these guys that they added in a Bosa, when you get Hoyt back, Deion Walker and that type of athleticism. We know what Ed Oliver's athleticism is. Joe Marino's another guy that's been calling for this for years, is more stunts. It doesn't have to be blitzes, but adding stunts with a blitz. I just want to see them get more aggressive, try to fix an issue that this defense has had, which is getting a quarterback on the ground and getting more pressure on the QB. So I don't think it'll be a big jump. I always warn Greg and I have had these conversations for years of the dime and the big nickel and all this stuff. They end up doing it. We saw more dime last year than we've ever seen. Like
we saw 3-2-6 at one point, and I got really excited.
Yeah, so they are going to do it, but I think it'll be incremental. I don't think they'll all of a sudden become Dick LeBeau's Pittsburgh defense where they're blitzing all the time. But I do think that things are going to get a little more aggressive with this new look front seven.
So Steve touched on it when he was on with us talking about that. I do think they had some of those things dialed up and ready. And then when you lost Benford in the playoff game, it just took that tool out of our tool belt and took it away. And Mike S here, I want to, you're not wrong in the rushing five, but it's actually not enough. I wish I had it up in front of me right now. There was an awesome study that just came out that showed rushing five is actually one of the most inefficient uses of defense, because the difference between the time of pressure on average of sending four creatively versus sending five is negligible. There's really not much of a difference. So what you want is either confuse them of which four are coming, but still drop seven into coverage, or if you come, you need to bring six. And that when you bring 6, the actual difference in time from snap to pressure is compressed enough that you consistently get it. So that you want to have, like you see all the time where we use like Milano and Bernard to mug the A gaps, and you don't know if they're coming or not. And most of the time they drop out, and then sometimes they come, but that's when Rousseau and the ends drop out or whatever it might be. That's the confusing part. The part that you want to do is when you mix it in, you want to send all 6, because then 1 normally gets home untouched and you get the true difference of the time from snap to pressure where it makes the difference. And sadly, it's what we saw Spagnuolo keep in his back pocket until the last 4th down snap when they needed it, and they brought an overload that they had not brought all game long. That's what I want. I want this year. My evolution that I want is I don't want to see things early. I want to see us be forced to play with our off-speed pitches. I don't want every 4th down and 4th and short to be the tush push. Show us other things that you can pivot to. Force yourself to play left-handed. Force yourself to get better at those things so that when you get into the key moments in the playoffs, because right now all that matters for us is the playoffs, have some things up your sleeve that, again, it's not never shown before, but don't make it that you've leaned so much on one thing that they kind of know what's coming, because it's obviously your best thing and everybody knows you're going to go to your best thing. Be more varied to where it's not as obvious, not as direct, and that you have more things that are maybe not equal, but that you can throw with confidence because you've tried more stuff during the season. I want to see more variance in what they try.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome job again, Colin. We appreciate you very, very much. Fantastic job in the chat. Super active all night. Really appreciate you guys in there. Help us out. We're getting back into the season here. Give us a like, give us a rating, give us a review. When you get done with the show, go back into YouTube after the live comments and leave us a comment there. Ask us a question in there. Follow up with something that you haven't seen there. Heck, just tell us that you're there for the algorithm. I don't care. YouTube doesn't know the difference. But just help us out there, or tell somebody around you about the show. Let them know that you think that they'll enjoy it. It's a fun way to do the post-game show. It's a fun way to learn about the matchups coming through. We work really hard to get good guests to come on who are smart and educated about the teams that we're going to play, who could tell you really, informational things about the matchup and what's coming in here. Aaron, why don't you let them know who our first guest is going to be next week?
Yeah, Cole Jackson. If you are somebody that has watched this show before, with the Bills are playing the Ravens, he's been our guest every single time that we've talked Ravens. Does a lot of great work, not just for the Ravens, but studying offensive linemen. Right up there for me in terms of when the Bills get an offensive lineman in the draft. Brandon Thorne is always my first go-to, but then I'll hit up Cole Jackson as well, just because I love the way he thinks about the game of football. So should be a really exciting talk, similar to some of the guys that, we've been doing this a long time, and you play the Ravens a lot, you play the best teams a lot, and there's a lot of playoff games. You get to like some of these guys. They're very like-minded. If we had a cover one Baltimore, it would be led by Cole Jackson. Yes. Straight
100%. 100%. He would be our first draft pick. Draft pick.
Absolutely.
All right, so thank you again. Great job by Colin. Great job by the chat. We appreciate you guys. On behalf of our team here at Cover One and fantastic producer Colin Ritchie, my co-host Aaron Quinn, I'm Greg Tompsett. You have been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.